Yes, guys, welcome back to another week of the weekly roundup with myself and Crypto Insight, where we give you the latest news, some bit of price analysis, and it's another week. We've got another, as you can see from the tabs above, we've got a lot to talk about today. But anyway, how are you, Will? How's your week been?
Week 11, bro. Mad. I was just doing a bit of a hand action there in the old cameras, just to remind the audience what week we're on. I'm doing all right. Just kept my eye on the charts and that this week. Again,
Yeah,
been quite eventful, but not quite as big as the last few weeks. I don't think that's something I'll start with. But we're kind of like, as we're going to talk about, building up with some anticipation for some bigger news, especially in and around XRP, which we're going to get into, and the Ripple case specifically. And we have had some actually like indirect pieces of big news, which we're going to talk about with the BIS, and obviously this with FTX we're going to start with. But yeah, it's not happened this week, but I feel like we're building up for a big one. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. Again, there's a lot coming out, but nothing like you said, nothing like it's impacted the market like massively, like we had like the past few weeks. I feel like the past few weeks have been like jam packed with like big news, whereas this week we've just had little bits of drops, but nonetheless, it's news. It's stuff to talk about, and this is pretty big actually, because you had people like blockchain backers speaking about this particular thing here about obviously BlockFi getting bailed out basically from FTX, the value of $250 million. So it's a big bailout just to help a struggling crypto company, because obviously we saw last week what was going on with Celsius.
Mm-hmm.
BlockFi basically did the same thing as Celsius. As you can see here, they're a rival. So it's just they've kind of prevented another big collapse here, basically.
Yeah.
And blockchain backer in his YouTube videos basically talking about how the CEO of FTX has limited the this particular downturn in price.
Yeah.
Because imagine, obviously, when this kind of news kind of broke out, it was just kind of the aftermath of the weekend when the price dropped.
Mm-hmm.
If it did come out and BlockFi did come out and say they were going to freeze
Yeah. No.
withdrawals like Celsius did, that
Fully.
would have been another red candle in my opinion. Like it's just another bit of big news which would have tipped a lot of people over the edge, I think. So
Yeah, and
I guess
obviously, go
go
on.
on,
Sorry, I was just gonna say
no,
like
go on.
obviously we're all like worried about that happening, and like as everyone's saying, like the contagion spreading from one place to another, because you don't know like who's invested into who. Like they're all probably got little shares of each of this pie, and like exactly like you're saying, is one just cascades onto another, which cascades onto a red candle, and then we have another one because that red candle liquidates someone else, and
Yeah,
it's all like
literally.
a knock-on effect. So Mr. Bankman-Fried might have done us a bit of a solid here by providing that 250 million line of credit. From what I've heard, they basically just offered them that money for they can dip into it when they want to, in order to, I presume, to like provide extra like collateral if they're going to get margin called or whatever. So
Yeah,
I don't know too much more than that,
yeah,
to
I'm
be
not.
honest.
Yeah, not don't know too much, but I hear it says it's to help bolster the balance sheet. So, but I think I agree with you in terms of that's why the money is there for. But I
It's
think the main reason is to stop doing stuff like this, so they didn't have to come out and say it's
yeah.
something big like that, because they've
Mm.
obviously got a bit more liquidity now to kind of back it up, back all their stuff up. So
Yeah,
just giving a bit more security for him, and it looks like he's doing a nice thing for the crypto market in general, because I think somewhere in this article it says he said it's important to protect other crypto companies, because they're all basically playing, they're all in the same game. Basically, they're all trying to achieve the same goal. So
yeah, for sure.
having one collapse isn't in their best interest, which is true, to be fair. Like I said, one red candle could have led to another red candle. Who knows what would have happened if anything? But
Yeah, I just want to stress that like it doesn't mean we're out of the woods. It just means that he saved
oh
like
no,
it means he
I'm just
saved one company, which could
yeah,
have
I
made it
know.
worse at the exact time. Doesn't mean we're not though. If he's like out there like bailing people out, you've got to think that this guy's smart and he could have bailed Celsius out. He could have whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So he's picked his time and he's put money into something like. If these big boys didn't think we were at least like near a bottom, or if they thought they can't save everything, so he's got to be doing that for a reason. Like he's probably calculated it. Like okay, there's this much opportunity here, and like there's this much chance it's gonna, others are still gonna go down, but now's a good time to be like starting to mitigate some of the risk of the market or whatever. And then I saw that the CEO of BlockFi or the founder said that they're looking forward to working with FTX for further developments in the future as well, isn't there?
yeah. So on the back of it, there could obviously a nice little partnership coming out the back of it as well.
Mm.
So he might have other ulterior motives, but nonetheless, it's
Oh well,
still good from him, isn't it?
scratch someone else's back, and they'll hopefully scratch yours in the future. Innit?
Exactly, exactly that. Could be why he's doing it. But moving on to some stuff here that came from the BIS, this particular YouTube channel here. Obviously, as you can see here, not many views like you stressed on your TikToks and Twitter. It's not really got a lot of media attention actually. Obviously, they don't have many subscribers, only 1.7k views, and the specific clip, obviously, you guys might have seen it on Crypto Insights TikTok anyway. Comes around at this time here, around a 6 minute mark, where he's basically describing the process of he kind of relates it to a tree and the CBDCs being like tree trunks and everything else being on the branches, and how all these CBDCs can operate on one ledger to obviously work together for payments and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah,
But
which is like the forest itself.
the forest, basically, yeah. So it's a pretty good analogy. It's a good way to explain it for those who might find it tricky in terms of how the financial system works, because I know it kind of gets a bit technical in terms of the way people kind of describe it, but he does a really good job in terms of showing how it could potentially look in the future. But what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think that like you're saying, that it's hard to visualize or understand the financial like side of it and the benefits of a CBDC. But when you break it down to what I think personally is going to come in the future, and what he's kind of explaining there is my personal belief, and I know that we share similar views, is that like everything's going to be tokenized at some point, and that's basically what he's saying. He's saying that like it doesn't mean cash is going to go away. It will just be. He talks about the branches of the tree, the different aspects of the financial system. He says that like it shows that cash is on there still. Then you'll get stocks, which will eventually become tokenized. He said that he even specifies that housing will probably get tokenized. You'll have like the retail and wholesale CBDCs. You'll have probably like tokenized commodities, all these sorts of things. And in the analogy, they're like the branches of the tree, which all plug into the centralized CBDC, which then goes into the ground in the roots. And in that ground is where all the other trees are growing. And within that is like where it's like he basically says, what does he say? One distributed ledger technology.
Yeah. For all,
like
basically.
ledger for everyone to plug into. So he's basically telling us that all these currencies or digital currencies that are going to be created will have some sort of interoperable ledger they're all plug into to trade with each other. It's basically what he's saying, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good YouTube video anyway, so I suggest guys go watch it, because I guarantee you'll learn something from that. But obviously, the assumption, not the assumption, but it kind of relates to XRP in a bit, because obviously we've got the XRPL, and obviously they've got links with all these companies already. So it kind of goes back to our educated guess that we keep talking about week in, week out. Whether it is will be on the XRPL is a completely different argument. Not saying it is at all, but it's more so like it kind of helps explain how a ledger or some sort of distributed ledger would help and work in the world we live in today, basically. So
yeah,
it's
and
not,
confirms that it's going to happen. Like which
yeah,
ledger that we're obviously putting our best bets from the information that we've had available to us for however many years. But these guys are now like, before we were speculating that it was going to be like this, and now he's telling us from the Bank of International Settlement, it's like them, the IMF and the World Economic Forum, IMF like International Monetary Fund, World Economic Forum, and the World Bank are the boys who make the decision basically for everyone, or at least suggest those decisions. And they're now coming out like this is it's an official video, and he's saying, yeah, everything's basically going to run on one ledger. And this is what
yeah.
we've been
So
speculating about, isn't it?
I'm just gonna close this. It keeps making noise on my screen. But yeah, literally what you just said there. We've been talking about it for the best part of what a year and a half now, since I got into it anyway. But or 2 years. But it's just kind of a bit more of confirmation in terms of that we were on the right path anyway in terms of our thinking. But it's there. It looks like it's coming. In terms of how it looks in the future, I guess we obviously don't know that yet. It's still a bit in the grey area because it's completely new. But I guess it kind of does reiterate the fact that, like you said, it's coming and that's how it would work. But it's a good YouTube video to explain to those people who might not know too much about it in terms of how it would work. But he does a good job of explaining it. And just to add to that as well, we've got this gentleman here who's the general manager of the BIS, saying that 90% of emerging market central banks have recently, wait, let me start that again. 90% of emerging market central banks that have recently visited the BIS are working or are in very advanced stages of phase of central bank money. So it's just adding to that kind of YouTube video there. And it kind of shows to me that how quick it's moving as well.
Yeah.
And how fast it's actually developing and how quick it could potentially be that we see this happening, because the world, like if you keep up to date with like the news in terms of like the economic news, you know that in fact, I think in this whole like meet and how the BAS kind of was speaking, they actually someone did mention the fact that the economic situation right now has never been this bad. It's not been this bad since World War II, and
Oh,
they
really?
came out and said that, and I watched that in the video. I think I was just speaking to you obviously about a Raoul Powell video that he was on someone else's podcast, and they mentioned that in there as well.
Mm.
And their whole discussion was about that and how bad the current situation actually is. And it
Mm.
kind of leads on to this because it kind of shows like a completely new financial system coming into play and how it could potentially work. It kind of does seem to solve a lot of the problems that we face,
Mm.
like we keep saying. So
Well,
it's another big tweet.
there's a lot of issues, and like some revolve around liquidity, and people like Ripple have been talking about that's what they want to basically help the world with for a lot of years since inception, basically. But kind of like not really on that topic. But I don't know if you saw today, but Sri Lanka today have basically gone like insolvent. Their economy's
Collapsed, didn't it?
collapsed today. Yeah. So what that means, and again, like it's the same. It's not exactly the same, but the same principles like crypto. When one company goes down, or in this case, a country, where does that contagion spread to? Like, who's next? Like, who do they owe money to? How's their people are still going to have to eat it some way, so someone's going to have to bail them out, or if they just let them go down completely, then they default on debt. And if other countries are already struggling and they need that money for a debt repayment to repay their own debt, then who goes down next? So
Yeah,
this is where we've got big problems worldwide. So I think that
yeah,
it's an interesting time that we're getting all these developments with CBDCs and all those 44 countries that went to El Salvador to talk about Bitcoin specifically, and then you're seeing that from Sri Lanka.
yeah. It's quite scary to be honest to see stuff like this coming out, even though we kind of did see it coming. Because I know me and you have actually spoken about this off video,
Mm,
how this could have potentially unfold.
mm,
Uh, People like countries' economies like folded in on itself, and then you see I've watched a lot of videos of a lot of big investors who seem a bit fearful on the same issue as well in terms of like economies collapsing.
mm.
And if you really do look into it and see a lot of stuff like this coming out, see the BIS making comments about all this kind of stuff and a potential new financial system, it makes sense why they are publicizing it now because we're getting people like obviously it was on Sky News that Sri Lanka's economy collapsed. So a lot of people know about it. So I guess they're kind of coming out and saying this could be a potential new way of fixing the financial system that we currently have, or
Yeah,
helping, or potentially either fixing it or bring a completely new, different aspect of it into the world.
yeah, because people like who don't have, who haven't even like researched the financial like markets or anything, wouldn't have any experience to know what this is like. And obviously, we haven't lived through anything like this as personally, or not that I can remember. Obviously, in 2008, we did have an issue, but like I wasn't really into finances back then. That
No.
was like 14 years ago for me. I was only like 14. Um, but now we're going to have things like Sri Lanka will potentially have a bail-in, and people won't even know what that is. But that's basically where like Sri Lanka are going to freeze everyone's bank accounts and take the money and use it to pay for shit because they can't, because they haven't got any money themselves, the government. So they're going to take the general saver. So like they could like freeze your bank right now, and like if it was happening in the UK, and just
It's
take your
crazy.
dollar. So
Imagine if that happened like here. It'd be obviously you're getting that massive uproar about it, but there's nothing you can do about it.
well,
And it just shows how desperate they are. It shows the situation that they're in. It's just an absolute dire situation that they're in.
yeah, well, very nearly happened in Italy a while ago. It did happen in Greece.
Agree.
We had Northern Rock in the UK as a private bank. It happened to Northern
Yeah,
Rock, and obviously they had Lehman Brothers in America. So like, people are saying we're waiting for our Lehman Brother moment. And I actually saw another video, but I don't know if this was just speculation or what, of like loads of people queuing outside of a Chinese bank trying to get money out, and they'd only limit them to a certain amount of withdrawals. So
yeah,
maybe it's happening there to like starting to happen, or some cracks are starting to appear. But as I was just saying before, it's like, even though it's horrific for Sri Lanka, and I'm really sorry to anyone who's there, because we know for the last few months, we even talked about this on a previous podcast, that they couldn't get enough oil for the people
yeah.
to get even gasoline in their cars or whatever. But like, I feel really sorry for them. But the big concern in terms of like worldwide economy is like, where does that expose people? Who's going to get exposed because of that? So it's kind of like, in my opinion, it's the start of like a something that's probably could be
Something a bit
worse.
worse.
Yeah.
I know. I feel like again, like I've watched a lot of YouTube over the past like couple of months. A lot of these big investors, lot of famous names are kind of going. like support that narrative that you just said, basically, that they're really fearful. It's fearful for me to watch them being fearful, because if you see them being fearful about, and rightly so, obviously, because what they think potentially could happen, if it does unfold that way over the next year or two, it's gonna shock everyone.
Mm.
Like a lot of people, I think something, even like people who are in the space now who seem to keep up with news, they're quite fearful something's going to happen, but I don't think they actually know what could potentially actually happen, how bad it could actually get.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So it's a tricky one. It is a tricky one. It's a tricky one if you're investing as well, because you don't know what's. Do you know what I mean? You're in limbo all the time in terms of whether you want to deploy capital or wait for a further dip. But like the dip that these guys are potentially talking about could be really catastrophic. But
Yeah.
that's why
Uh,
that's why they say if people have cash in those situations is king, because you can just scoop up everything
Yeah, so
in
long as
terms of investment.
your currency survives. Like if you've got Sri Lankan money right now, like who
It doesn't mean
cares, bro?
anything.
It's not worth.
It's not worth
So
anything.
that is also like a genuine thing to take into consideration. Though. This is why portfolio diversification in like a time like this when we could have potential economic crisis is actually really important, because if we lose certain aspects of our economy now, and I say lose and like it sounds blasé, like we're talking about it like it's nothing, but if housing market just crash massively now, then like if all your money's tied into property, then you're broke. If the same happens with the Great British Pound, then you're broke. If the stock market goes to zero, you're broke. If the crypto market goes to zero, you're broke. If you're all heavily invested into one different section. And for me, I'm heavily invested into crypto, and I'm taking that chance because my opinion is that even if that does happen with crypto, is that I actually think crypto's got the tech to get us out of the problem, and
Exactly that.
it's like a hedge. Like even if short term, where I really think we've had a decent capitulation, if we go like proper like catastrophe, worldwide catastrophe, I think crypto will be one of the things that does recover, in my personal opinion, just because I think it's something that offers a solution to this problem, which is at the minute we don't have. Like we just speculate on the crypto price just based on hype, essentially. But if it got utilized, like these guys are talking about, like 90% of central banks in the world are creating some sort of e-money, then crypto in some ways will help with that, in my opinion. So
No,
that's
I
my
agree with that. I definitely do agree with that, because if these guys are coming out and saying that we've not been in a place like this economically since World War Two,
hmm
think about the technology we had back in World War Two. There was not a crypto, there was not an alternative to get us out of the situation that we were in. But now we have the technology and we have crypto as
yeah.
a potential. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if worse comes to worse, and we had an absolute catastrophe, economic catastrophe, everyone was like needed bailing out, and crypto was the technology that people adopted, which seems to be the front runner. There's
hmm
nothing else that seems to be obviously competing with it in terms of like an alternative. That's another reason why obviously me and you and a lot of other people are invested into crypto, not just because they think, okay, it's just a cycle, we'll put money in as an investment,
Mm.
but it could potentially save the financial system. It could
Yeah,
really aid us in getting out of the sticky situation that we're in,
for
which
sure.
obviously provides utility, which then drives the price even higher, which is why obviously, like I said, me and you are invested in this
Yeah,
space.
and specifically, we invest into utility-based assets or ones that
Yeah,
we think will bring utility to the market. Like
that's more. Yeah, it's good
that's
to add
why
that.
we don't really mess around with like any other crypto. Like even though it may look like it's going to pump in a shorter period of time or whatever, I just always just keep plowing into utility-based assets. And my like long-term goal, guys, is like if crypto rips and everything else dips, I'm not just going to sit on crypto. When we get to a point where if I think crypto's like massively not necessarily overvalued, but overvalued in comparison to other things in the market, which I think will recover. So, like, if housing took a crash, if stocks take a crash, and crypto takes a rally, if you compare those two assets from where I've invested to where they are when I'm like looking at take profits, I'm not just going to hold cash and then rebuy crypto. I'm going to be diverse. Like, I'm going to be like pulling it out, putting it into property. If property's down, putting it into different stocks and shares. If stocks and shares are down, all those sorts of things. It's like don't limit yourself to an asset class just because you've been heavily invested into that asset class. Like I'm 99% exposed to crypto. I understand the risks, but it doesn't mean that I'm always going to be 99% exposed to crypto. It means for now, in
In
my
this
opinion,
time.
it's the
Yeah,
best opportunity.
yeah. No, I definitely agree with you. Definitely do. Like we've said it on every other episode, and that's. I guess we don't need to touch on it too much. Probably boring everyone. But quickly move on from that into some other brief news. We'll just move over to these next ones. Are pretty brief. Just something we wanted to display to you guys anyway. But we've got this of Majaloot Payment Hub here. So obviously these guys have some sort of ties with XRP.
Hmm.
And someone tweeted this. I just thought it was a really interesting tweet, so we thought we'd give it to you guys. But the main bit we want to focus on here is obviously the source at the bottom when they're talking about developments in India for MEITY, whatever that means, connected to a private XRP based system. Yet again, and obviously similar design stablecoins for CBDCs. Yet again, just kind of giving us a bit of an insight in terms of how XRP could potentially be a part of CBDCs and how the interoperability between them
Yeah,
in the
and they're
future.
specifically mentioning XRP, and like that doesn't happen very often. So from what
No,
we know about Mojaloop, which isn't loads,
no,
they're a Ripple partner, non-profit who help with payment systems in like emerging economies, basically.
yeah,
And
but
they're
yeah,
talking about
again,
XRP specifically, and that's the important
yeah,
part, isn't it?
that's we probably should have spoken about it when we were speaking about the BIS. But again, it kind of does relate to that in terms of how he how he was talking about the tree. XRP could be a part of that. So I guess that's a good link in terms of that.
XRP is going to be the branches, not the branches for the flipping whole canopy. That's my
Who
opinion.
knows?
That's
Yeah,
my
it's
opinion.
like we said, the information's out there, whether you want to believe it or not, in terms of where you think it'll be another ledger, fair enough. But I'm happy to place my investment into XRP for that reason, and for the whole 10 minutes what we've just been speaking to you about in terms of why we're investing into crypto in general. But
Yeah,
um,
and look, just off the
oh,
back of that, it's like even if it's not like if this is the most obvious thing, we'll. This is another reason why I have like such a big investment into it. At some point, we'll have a speculative run where people think that it might be XRP, where the
exactly.
whole market starts to think that, and within that run, I'll take some profits just because then you basically back yourself. So if it isn't, you still got loads of cash, but if it is, you still got a decent position. So that's
Yeah,
something that I think will definitely come at some point if we continue the way we are, because they're only expanding anyway. So it's more than likely going to be some sort of speculative run when people stop like just randomly footing XRP for no reason.
yeah. I guess that'll come once, like sentiment picks up a bit,
Hmm.
court case is finally over. I guess that speculative run will come into full effect then, especially when the court case is over. But just whilst we're on the topic of India as well, obviously India is a country that you've been shouting about for a long time now, and again we seem to speak about them every week because there's always some sort of news coming out of India in terms of how they're adopting some sort of technology, blockchain technology they're gonna incorporate potentially in the future. But as you can see from this tweet here, the Reserve Bank of India is set to run a blockchain-based pilot project centered on trade financing. Reason again, I just showed it up very briefly for you guys, just to show you and just to kind of support the fact that what Will talks about and how he thinks India are going to be a big player, not just specifically for XRP, but for blockchain in general. They really are like piloting a lot of things. They're trying a lot of things. They're not being like how the US are being, for example, in terms of almost turning a blind eye to blockchain because it's not regulated. These guys are coming out and trying to get ahead of the pack. That's the way I see it anyway.
Yeah, well, they came
Um,
out and like drop like regulation for it, even though I don't really agree with their regulation. They've come out and done something. It means that people know where they stand. And then now, as you say, like, well, if we just both think that something big's, I think something big's
yeah,
coming for India.
yeah, no. Even like crypto aside, if you talk to someone who's obviously really clever in terms of who studies economics, they would have been telling you for about the past 10 years, keep your eye on these emerging economies. More specifically, keep an eye on India
Hmm.
as being one of those front runners because just due to the fact that the population's so young, they're really tech savvy nation.
Hmm.
It just kind of goes hand in hand to blockchain as well. So
They've got like the most people per like however many with degrees and like decent degrees like lawyers,
yeah,
doctors, those sorts of things in the world apparently, like for their population.
they're literally the perfect nation for to adopt blockchain
Yeah.
and be a front runner in it because they've got the population to or the demographic in the population to support it anyway. And obviously, as you can, like you just said there, they've got the knowledge to support it as well. But just another bit of news. I guarantee you next week we'll have some sort of other article about India and how they're making moves within.
Next week, maybe they'll come out and say, "Yo, we're building a CBDC on the XRPL, guys."
Exactly. Yeah. Sorry, can't keep it a secret anymore. Talking about XRP,
Hmm.
not much on it this week, but obviously this did come out here, and obviously James Philan here coming out with it, and the defendants requested that its response to the SEC's opposition to the amnesty motion to be filed publicly. Judge Torres has given the SEC a chance to propose its own redactions to the defendants' response by June 23rd, which is obviously today, but we're yet to hear it as of the time we're filming this. But I'm not too sure what it actually means in terms of
My
for the case.
my
Go on.
opinion on what it means is like obviously the like motion is John Deaton representing the XRP holders. He wants to basically see what this Patrick Doody, who is the SEC's like expert on XRP, has to say with his like filing against XRP specifically. And he filed into them, and then the SEC responded to his filing, but they aren't showing it to the public because it's like a legal matter. But then basically Ripple have said, "Oh, can you show it to the public because it's obviously their representation." And then the SEC have said, "Oh, we don't want to show it to the public." So the judge is saying to the SEC, "Oh, you can redact bits that you don't want the public to see, but basically, yeah, do it by the 23rd of June."
Yeah,
But I bet we just get like a blank piece of paper
yeah.
just redacted,
With loads of
redacted, redacted. Yeah.
loads of like black lines through it all, kind of thing. They
Yeah.
don't want to show. That's what we normally get from them
Yeah, I
anyway.
know.
But one positive thing is that I saw obviously seen someone tweet it in the thing as well. Is obviously this came out on June 21st, 10:23 our time. Obviously a bit don't know what that time will be in America, but the fact that they've given the deadline of like what 2 days later is quite positive in terms of getting the case moving on, and the judges are obviously on board with that. So I guess that's a good thing you can kind of take out of it. I guess the negative thing is the fact that again someone else commented this in the tweet, but they're indicating that the SEC would obviously censor what they want to censor and show what they want to show to help them, but to benefit them in the case, which is obviously in their best interest. But I guess time will tell in terms of what comes out of this. We will see later on today, and I'm sure we'll report on it next week. But just thought we'd throw that in there anyway as a bit of news. But obviously linking to that as well, a tweet from Eleanor Tourette here, just kind of telling us what we're waiting for in terms of the case. We've obviously got George Netburn's decision on whether the Hinman emails, which we've been talking about week in week out, are if they do fall under attorney-client privilege or not. And then obviously what we just spoke about there in terms of the SEC's motion to seal its opposition on
Yeah.
John Deaton's request to file. So they're the two main things we're kind of waiting for at the moment. So
And then
we'll keep you.
obviously, sorry, on her reply below, she's just put like,
Oh, yeah.
John Deaton says both decisions are imminent. So we've already seen that one's going to be the 23rd, which is today, as in the Doody one.
Yeah.
And then when
Point
are we
one.
going to see about the email? I'm actually nervous to think about those emails, bro. Like, that's the thing that could either make like add or retract 6 to 12 months off this lawsuit. No joke.
Yeah, because I feel like the XRP community and just everyone in general, I think, have hyped up these emails so much in terms of making it a factor which could potentially end the court case, which it can. If we don't get what we want out of it, I guess a lot of momentum's kind of taken out of the XRP kind of army, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
we just kind of have to, at that point, we literally have to just wait it out. And obviously, I'm guessing the trial, this will then go to trial.
Yeah, I think the next thing's like summary judgment, which is like 15th of November.
Yeah, so we'll be waiting until November, December for a decision anyway. If the emails don't get released or we don't get to see them in time.
But if we do get the emails,
I mean, like, it's not even like, oh, we're hoping to get the emails. There's a good chance we get to see these emails.
I think
Well,
that's
I'd like
what
to
makes
think
me
so
nervous
anyway.
about it, bro. I think that's what makes me nervous about it. Like when you go in with like a neutral expectation, anything can happen. But when you're going in like now, I'm thinking like, surely the judge is going to rule on the emails, and then we put all this like waiting on it, and if we don't get them, it's like, well, either they're not relevant to the case, or like there's something going on behind closed doors, and either way, like it just makes you, it's just going to be deflating, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've obviously had a lot of thought in terms of the emails, but for me, obviously, we're no legal experts, so I guess we can't say too much in terms of why they can't do certain things or not. But if if these emails have been made into such a big issue and they obviously have so much relevancy to the case, why aren't the judges just saying we would need these emails, at least for her to look into first before they want to make it public or not? I know I've said this before in other weeks, and I guess there is some sort of privilege in terms of why the judge can't just ask for their emails. But for me, if there was an issue and the potential resolution is in some sort of email chain, as a judge, surely you should be able to just look into them, dive into them, and then deem whether they're relevant or not. If they are, then you can say, okay, look, they need to see these emails as well.
Yeah, well, she has basically done that. Like, 'cause she asked for 10, and then the SEC basically pleaded with her and said, look, we want to give you another
True.
10. And then so she has looked at the other 10. And I feel like if she wasn't sure, this is what we've talked about. I don't know if we talked about this on camera or not, but I feel like if she wasn't sure, she'd have been like, "Oh, I need the whole chain." I don't even know
Yeah,
why I shouldn't ask the whole chain. It's only 58, and you already read 20
this is
of them
what I mean.
anyway.
I
But
know. I guess there must be something that we don't know why she can't do that. Otherwise, she would have done that, I'm sure.
yeah, maybe
But that's the news done. I
that's the
guess
news.
that's the news.
But
And
yeah, so the biggest thing we're waiting for is those Hinman emails, and they could come like
yeah,
to. I actually think they'll come today or tomorrow. I think they'll come today, to be
yeah.
honest.
Like obviously, these guys seem to decide everything when we kind of go to sleep.
Mm.
Because obviously that's the time difference. But if we could wake up tomorrow and we have a decision on these emails,
And extra
which
people
could
be eight
pump the
hundred
price,
dollars.
you never know. You never know. You actually never know. But yeah, in terms of price action, guys, nothing really big to report on here. The
I
one
know.
thing we
Yeah,
did
I was gonna say.
did just want to speak about was obviously another topic that Will's kind of been speaking a lot about recently is the price of crude oil, because obviously it's a big, obviously it's not just one of the indicators. It's a big indicator in terms of what's happening with inflation,
Mm-hmm.
because crude oil seems to display, well, display is not the right word, but translate into in terms of inflation as well. It
Mm-hmm.
tends to follow inflation
Sure.
because everyone uses crude oil. It's a big one of the biggest, obviously, traded commodities. And let me try and get it on
Yeah,
here
so like
because
one of the main like things in the basket of CPI for like consumer price index
yeah,
is oil. So when oil goes up, in turn it adds to that basket of things that make it more expensive for the consumer. So then obviously the inflation rates are higher. So if
yeah,
we start to see this drop in oil, you got to hope that then the CPI readings would print lower. It's not obviously going to be immediate, but it might be like a month later. And then if that happens, if CPI prints start to come lower, is when you can see the Fed start to relax on their monetary policies. And then when the Fed relax on their monetary policies, that gives us a bit of a platform to be able to run. It doesn't mean we will. It just means that people are going to be less like uncertain because the Fed will. Well, the Fed at the minute, by increasing interest rates, are basically stifling growth in the country because inflation is too high. When you want growth to continue in your country, you need to have like monetary conditions being looser. So when they are more loose, then growth may continue, and then people may like invest into things like risk on assets like stocks or like growth stocks, specifically like tech and that sort of stuff. And crypto has been falling in that bracket at the minute. Whether it will decouple or not, we don't know. It hasn't yet.
mm. Yeah. It's just another thing that we wanted to just bring to your guys' attention in terms of like there's like I stressed and will stress last week. You can't just look at price action in terms of, especially now, in terms of what's going on worldwide. You need to be looking at loads and loads of different things,
Mm.
loads of indicators, and this is just another one to throw in the basket because obviously this is basically illustrating the whole inflation narrative which is going on at the moment. In terms of what's going to happen with that, it's anyone's guess. I hear a lot of conflicting information by really big investors. So if you're watching the video and a lot of people are being like bearish, I guess like don't give it too much um, thought because anything can happen, and there's a lot of other people fighting the other story. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a madness out there. It could be a long one. It could be a lot of people are calling for a lot more pain. Obviously, a lot of people are calling for a recession. Obviously, seems to be one of the biggest narratives out there. If that does come, obviously it's going to affect the markets, and a lot of people. I feel like a lot as time goes on, more people are leaning towards that there's going to be a recession sooner rather than later. Whether it's a sharp one and we come out and bounce off it, which would be the most ideal situation for us investors, is there's another story. Again, time will tell because although we've been in similar situations, like if you obviously go back to World War II or the 70s, obviously there are similarities, but we live in a completely different world
Mm-hmm.
when there's different technologies and different options out there now. So the pace, the what I'm trying to say is the timings might be different, even though the events like a recession might still happen. The timing in terms of how long it lasts for, how much we actually do go down in terms of like how much it does to damage the economy in terms of negative reads is a different story.
Yeah, I completely agree. You've hit the nail on the head there, bro. It's just like, well, the old saying rings true. Is like history doesn't necessarily repeat, but it does rhyme. So,
Yeah,
like, we can only take like the data from the past and use that as our our best guess to like put on to what's going to happen in the future. But as we go into the future, little aspects change, which change things in general. So obviously you can't guarantee stuff, and that's why everyone's like so on the fence at the minute with everything, like price action wise.
That's it. That is it. I guess just have to keep an eye on it, and if there is news, I'm sure you'll hear about it. But if not, you'll hear about it from us
You
and
will.
what we think about it anyway.
That is true, and you'll
But I
hear
think
about it either.
that's a wrap for week 11, guys.
Yeah, you'll hear about
Uh,
things either over on here or on Twitter.
yeah, go follow us on Twitter here at Crypto Insight UK. Obviously, follow us Insta, YouTube. Obviously, subscribe. Put the bell notifications on. Like the video. Comment if you've got any questions for sure, and we will 100% answer every single comment that you guys fire at us. So yeah,
Juice is up to 3,000 followers. Come on, guys. We
yeah.
need
Come on,
six
where
followers.
are we? 6 followers. If you're watching this YouTube video and you do not subscribe, follow us on Twitter. Go ahead and follow and screenshot it like you did, and we'll shout you out
Yeah, and you're a
in next
snake.
week's
And you're a
episode.
snake if you don't already do it.
Yeah, and that. So we'll probably give you a bit of stick next week as well. Do it at your own peril. That's all we'll say.
I'll be like, these are all the snakes that watch the YouTube.
Help me get to 3K. But now, crypto insight to 3K. Let's get it trending.
Yeah, okay, I like that. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Like
Let's
it.
do it. But yeah, that's a wrap, guys.
That's a
See you
wrap.
guys next week.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in. Episode 11 of the weekly roundup. Peace up, A-Town Downs, I should say. Nice one.